Ready?
Ready.
Okay, hold on 1 second, we go to camera.
Okay, I'd like to call the November 5th meeting of the Branding and Design Committee to order. I'll take the roll.
And I'd like to mention that this is a special meeting called today, not a regular meeting. And Brad Marchie,
Here.
Esther Bates,
Here.
here with us on Zoom. Jennifer Dryden-Hess,
Here.
Carlina Viluda Kazmarchuk.
Here.
And we have a new member who was appointed by the council, Jennifer Sony.
Here.
Who's here. With this, pledge to the flag.
Hey, Esther, you want to lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I don't really have a flag except on my screen. So if you'll all stand and put your hand over the heart, and then I'll leave it to you, Brett.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Boy, that was sort of like roll, roll, roll your boat. Okay.
At this point, we'll take comments, public comment on items not on the agenda. If anybody here would like to speak on items not on the agenda, please come up. Raise your hand. Items not on the agenda?
I have no idea what's on the agenda.
On the agenda, we have design guidelines for Copenhagen closure and the TRC for businesses. And we also have IDK marketing design for Yule Fest.
I would prefer to give public comment at the beginning rather than sit through the agenda. Is there any public comment allowed?
There's no particular problem with allowing that.
I think we're fine with that.
My name is Eric Hutchins. I'm a resident in Solvang, and I'm also an employee of a business on Copenhagen Drive. And my statement is this: if people come to Solvang from near and far, primarily to experience its family-oriented, old-world Danish charm, then that is Solvang's de facto brand. This being so, then everything done to design or redesign Copenhagen Drive should clearly, if only broadly, support this brand. Why? Because to do otherwise will dilute public perception of the Solvang brand and result in less travel to Solvang for the purpose of having this branded experience. Extensive conversations over the last several months with people coming from as far away as Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and San Francisco Bay Area have without exception reinforced the above description of Solvang's brand and yielded the following data. Without exception, my customers found being able to walk the streets without cars and sit outside attractive and consistent with the brand they came to enjoy. Second, none of my customers indicated a hardship arising from the lack of parking on Copenhagen Drive. I therefore strongly urge this advisory committee and the Solvang City Council to: one, permanent closure, make the temporary closure of Copenhagen to vehicular traffic permanent, and to redesign it in a way consistent with Solvang's brand as a family-oriented old world Danish experience. Second, best practices and review of encroachment applications to further support Solvang's brand on Copenhagen by vesting this committee with the task of A, establishing a list of best practices and guidelines, and B, accept the same as a necessary prerequisite for continued and/or new city approval of business encroachment onto what is now the street area beyond the sidewalk. Third and last, reconstruction and new areas of encroachment to further support the Danish European design of Copenhagen. Give strong consideration to extending the sidewalk all the way across Copenhagen so that the public walks down the center of what is now the paved street, and the encroachments approved by the city for business use become what is now the sidewalk. Respectfully, Eric Hutchins. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? See none. Anybody online would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Please raise your hand if you would like to speak. I see none. And Mr. Chair, would like to just ask you to potentially move items B and A. Item B is the IDK marketing design for Yule Fest. And as you think about the overall guidelines for setup on Copenhagen and TRC, there are certain items that IDK plans on placing on Copenhagen that would be good for you to know what those are as you make your decisions. So if you agree with that, if you could make a motion to make a change to the agenda, and we'll see where there's a second.
We're going to take it off the agenda?
No,
No.
so to move item B
Motion to move item B ahead of item A.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
okay.
Is there a second? All
Sorry, I missed that. I'll second
right, everybody in favor, say aye.
it.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
5-0. So we'll go to item which is now 2A, which would be IDK marketing design for Yule Fest. And we
Hello.
have Scott here from IDK.
Hello. Thanks for having me, and apologies for the slightly last minute nature. We want to make sure, obviously navigating the new BDC, we want to make sure that we don't find ourselves running afoul of any design guidelines with Yule Fest this year. So I'll start with a high level of what our intentions are for Yule Fest for 2020. These have not really been shared publicly until today, but have been discussed with various businesses and stakeholders within town. And obviously, we've had extensive conversations with city staff and understanding the county guidelines, whether we agree with them or not, understanding the county guidelines that restrict our ability to invite folks to gather in groups of 3 families or more, being restricted through the holidays sort of limits what we're able to do in terms of creating this experiences around Yule Fest that we're used to. For example, the tree lighting ceremony with the dance and music and all of those items would not technically be allowed under the guidelines this year. So with that, obviously understanding our objectives last year in Yule Fest were meant to sort of reignite interest in Solvang to a new audience. And I think that this year our goal is to tone that back to focus on enhancing Solvang's old world charm and hopefully working with the businesses to give them an opportunity to for us to present them as a destination Christmas market experience. So to that end, our plans are basically we'll do the Nisei adventure again, which was the scavenger hunt where they will place Nisei throughout the TRC, and participants will be able to do a citywide hunt for the Nisei. We'll do that again this year. We are hoping to have Yule Feast this year, which would be an open air dining experience on the portion of Copenhagen that is in front of the visitor center, essentially. And we could do socially distanced tables. If you remember, we did that in the park last year, and it was well received and is something that can be done within the guidelines. So guests will enjoy a 4-course wine paired dinner under the closed to street traffic streets twinkling lights, safely seated at socially distanced tabled groupings. Each course will be provided by Solvang's chef and restaurants, bakers, and craft food purveyors, and all wines will be sourced from local Santa Barbara County wine country Santa Ynez vineyards and vintners. So that's kind of the plan for the one sort of broad experiential bit that we can do. And then Saturdays throughout Yule Fest, we'll encourage folks to take food tours. We're hoping to bring back the candlelight tours, so things that can be done in small gatherings. But I think for this year, the most sort of grandiose option for folks will be the city itself. And to that end, we're working with the Christmas Tree Committee, which is a group of of locals. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of, and we're working with them to provide 100 live Christmas trees to businesses that can be decorated as part of a decorating contest. They'll be provided free of charge to the businesses. And the only thing that we're asking for in exchange for the tree is pictures and video, behind the scenes footage of them decorating it, so that we can use that to encourage visitors, to come and check out the 100 unique, what we assume to be unique Christmas tree displays throughout the TRC. In addition to that, we're creating, inspired by the Wine Valley Inn commercial that took place for Xfinity a couple of weeks ago at the Wine Valley Inn, inspired by the huge outpouring of support for that sort of cityscape. We've taken to create these Instagrammable moments throughout the TRC that will encourage people to come safely and at their own time to take pictures, tag Solvang, and again, be part of an immersive experience without kind of formally gathering. So to that end, Jeremy, if I can share my screen, our local contractor is, share screen, perfect. Our local contractor, Islay Events, based in Buellton, is who's helping us with the lighting design, and sort of decor. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we're focusing on old world, more traditional holiday, European holiday sort of motif, as opposed to the over the top kind of attention grabbing motif that we did last year. So by no means is this hodgepodge sort of what we're doing, but it's more of a mood board for what kind of drove us in this direction. So this is a rough sketch of one of the Instagram areas, which would be the pergola in the park. So we would create, the toy soldiers and large oversized presents and sort of, large custom made items. We'd have snow blanket up on the roof so that it looks snowy, and just have a place that people can come and sort of take photos and share their Solvang experience, which we hope will then attract additional tourists, similar to what happened with Cambria's holiday lights, which are not happening this year. This is a sort of colorized version of the rendering or the mock-up that we were talking about. Then one of the other areas would be over on the visitor center. Again, here you can see on the right sort of the inspiration for what we're thinking on the visitor center. So again, carrying the snowy small Danish village motif all the way through the TRC is sort of our goal, and focusing on warm lights and we know that there's not a lot for tourists to do after dark in the TRC, even though it's something that tourists have long been telling us that they want. So this at least gives families the opportunity to kind of go out and explore town, even if many of the businesses are closed after dark. Here's another sort of mock-up of an area that we would envision as a as an Instagrammable spot. Again, focusing on trees, white lights, warm Danish, a warm, more old world, old charm motif than what we did before. Again, sort of rendering of the types of decor that we're envisioning for these areas. One of the things we've talked about doing, and I'm still not 100% sold on, is doing in the park one of these over-the-sized sort of baubles. These were the Chumash actually had one at their valet parking last year, similar to this one here at the very bottom of the screen, the 088. And people loved it. They sat in a little bench underneath and got their pictures taken and drink their little hot chocolate. And, a lot of them, it became kind of a theme for the holidays for them. So, this is an option. Something we're looking at is doing something like this in the park as sort of something to attention grab on the way into town. The only hesitation here is that it has to be made right, or they kind of look chintzy. And, we're working with suppliers right now to find what we can get on time that matches, our quality standard. So this is another kind of blown up version of what we were showing. So in addition, we've been looking at if we don't do this, one of the things we were looking at is doing basically snowflakes and toy soldiers on the light posts, both on 246 on Alisal and over on Copenhagen. Just lit pieces that can again just kind of reinforce the Old Town sort of charming old world Christmas for this year. So these are the two directions we're going. But what we wanted to do today, obviously, was present that to you as the folks who are responsible for the overall branding and design of town, and understand if that's in line with what you hope to see for Christmas, and get feedback before we commit to a direction. So I am opening it up now for questions. And sorry, Jeremy, are you in the room? Is that something that do you want to expand on any of that, or is that okay?
You did a great job, Scott.
Thanks, Jeremy. So yeah, questions.
Do you have any questions?
Just a thought, and I really like what you proposed. There was,
Is your microphone on? Push the little button.
There we go.
I really liked what you proposed, particularly the old world charm of Solvang. I think it will be very well widely received. What with the toy soldiers, what came to my mind is, and because my daughter participated for years in the Nutcracker with the toy soldiers. And I saw in another town where in the windows they did dancers that were from the Nutcracker. I wondered if we could integrate ballet dancers in the windows.
So one of the things that we are we hope to be working with the chamber on, they had a brilliant idea of sort of taking the theme of the Scarecrow Fest and expanding on it a little bit with a window decorating contest, in addition to the trees, for those that don't want to do, that they don't want to water or don't want to deal with trees. So the chamber is working on a window decorating contest. So I think that that's something that I can mention to them as part of the window decorating contests. That would be in addition to the tree decorating that we're encouraging businesses to do this year.
I guess the only other question or thought I had is there any way to incorporate any music at all in speakers or anything like that in terms of adding an ambient,
So this is something, and I'm looking at Zena. I know we can't make eye contact through the computer, but
I'm looking at you.
I'm certain that we're staring at each other, because we've struggled with this, because the rules are not only do the rules change literally and I mean no disrespect to government, but not only are the rules changing literally daily, but they're also sort of ambiguous. And the one about music is at least on the Santa Barbara County side, they said that you can't encourage people to gather. So, the problem with music is obviously, yes, we could say that music along Copenhagen, for example, where it's closed, people can still kind of listen and walk up and down the street. But if for whatever reason people were to stop and gather, then we're technically breaking the rules. So it's a gray area, and I'm hoping that Zena and I will be able to talk to her colleagues in the Santa Barbara County Health Department soon. In fact, I think we have a conference call with them tomorrow, and get a little bit more information. But as of this moment, that's something that we looked at the beginning of the closure of Copenhagen, and it was something that we were told that we couldn't do. So that's the short answer. I mean, I have my own political opinions, but
by
unfortunately,
nature
I'm
of
not allowed to share
being
them.
street, you're almost encouraging gatherings. So it's right, it's at conflict with one another.
Somewhat, yes. And I think a lot of those guidelines have been in conflict, and Jeremy has some updates, but The laws do change all the time. Some things may become a little bit more flexible by the time we get to December. And we can definitely specifically request and work with the county about different scenarios, like just maybe music on speakers
Yeah,
and
that's
not a
what
live
I'm thinking.
performer,
I'm
but
just thinking-
yeah, we'll do whatever we can, but yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, I have a couple clients I was talking to today, and the health department was out and about in Santa Barbara over the weekend. And we managed to grab one of them and talk to one we've been working with all the bars and some of our other clients. And word is, we're not sure how soon, and Scott doesn't even know this. I haven't had, I just found this out today, that the state is working on releasing some new guidelines for individual entertainment. So like solo performers, things like that. We're assuming no woodwinds and horn instruments, but probably something along those lines, because this state actually lost a lawsuit 2 weeks ago regarding specifically this stuff. So they've realized that they have not looked at this industry and allowed it to try to reopen. And now they're, I think, quickly trying to catch up on that a little bit. So hopefully we'll have some guidelines from them in the next week or two. And I'm sure Scott will change stuff as quickly as he can to make that work, because it's all in our favor. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, and I will say that a couple of really obnoxious event planners based in San Francisco did in fact take the state and the city of San Francisco to court last week, and they were successful in challenging some of the requirements within reason. And from that, the San Francisco Entertainment Commission created a jam permit, or just add music, which, as Jeremy said, doesn't allow singing or woodwinds or whatever, but allows you to have ambient music, as long as you have an ambassador that's encouraging any groups of 6 or more that form to dissipate. So my hunch, and this is a wild ass guess, so take it at face value, my hunch would be that if the state makes a change, as they've been doing from the beginning of the pandemic, they will emulate what San Francisco's done.
What's the deal with the bird houses all over town? The little, isn't that a speaker system?
There used to be a speaker
It doesn't
system. They're
work
just,
anymore?
yeah. The speakers themselves are very old. I mean, you could potentially, and it's a little bit different than just doing it for ULFest, but you could put new speaker equipment into those birdhouses in the
Yeah.
future.
In the future.
Yeah, no, I just wondered, but that, they don't work at all anymore.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, we've spent some money trying to bring them back to life and discovered that we couldn't. So it would have to be a rip and replace.
Okay.
And then Esther actually had a comment before we started talking. I noticed her trying to wave. So, and Esther is back. There you are. Oh,
looks like we have a little bit of connection issue. Esther, can you hear us?
No audio yet.
Looks,
She needs to join with audio.
Esther, join with audio. We can't hear you.
We hold the sign up in front of her, unmute.
no, it looks like she's not on audio yet. Oh, connecting. Connected. Hey, Esther.
Esther, you're muted now. Just unmute.
Okay, my apologies. I'm having connectivity issues here. I missed a little bit of that, but what I wanted to mention was I like a lot of the ideas that IDK has. Couple of comments about the soldiers, because that's kind of a German thing more than a Danish thing. So I'd love to see if we could maybe incorporate some more Danish into the Yule Fest, and I think it wouldn't be a big challenge, maybe having some of the ornaments on the trees reflect that, and you already have that a bit with the red and the white theme. But I was trying to think of something that might be able to be used in place of the toy soldiers, or how to make those Danish soldiers rather than German nutcrackers kind of thing. So, I haven't come up with a great idea other than that, but just that was my main comment about it.
Great. Jeremy, I don't know. I know that when we were talking about those, it was because, obviously large scale mass produced things are sort of fall into three categories, either snowmen, toy soldiers, or giant stars, which, and when they're that big, they kind of look like the communist flag. So I wanted to kind of stay away from that. But I agree with you. We were looking at Nisei potentially, and which have become wildly popular in the last like 18 months, by the way. But it's tough to find that. So Jeremy, I don't know if that's something that we can talk a little bit more tomorrow, and maybe Zena, I don't know what the rules are. Is that something we can email to this group and get like a straw poll on?
You can work with me to email it and get individual comments after the fact.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'll take a look and see what we can figure out.
Great.
So the reason this item is here in front of you today is because when we were talking about Copenhagen closure during Yule Fest, we realized all of these items will be interconnected. And also last year, there was some commentary around Yule Fest that, you know, there needs to be an oversight as to the brand that all of this is created. So that's why this item is here in front of you. We need to take public comment, and then you can deliberate and give any just general thoughts that you may have. So at this time, we'll take public comment in person.
Hi, Tracy Beard with the Solvang Chamber of Commerce. Scott, I think the ideas of the Christmas tree are great, and thank you for taking that off our plate. And we do want to work with you on the window contest. And yeah, we've just been playing phone tag. So no, we haven't had a chance to talk about a few things. But we have the Santa Ynez Jazz music that is very interested in wanting to do a walking holiday event and the live activity. And if we do something in solidarity of saying that it is in no publicity, we don't seem to have a problem, because our county supervisor of the 3rd district gathered 400 people in a union of solidarity in our park 2 weeks ago. So as long as I think we don't do any PR and we just have the opportunity to have music at some point, I don't think that is a problem. It doesn't seem to be on the supervisor level. At the same time, I would like to ask how many tickets were purchased last year for the dinner from the city, and how many from private guests were purchased last year on the dinner in the park? Those would be my questions of how many people we gathered, of is it worthwhile, and will people feel safe on that level? But everything else I think is great of what you want to do.
Do we have anybody else that would like to make a comment on this item in the audience or online? Oh, okay, please come.
I thought all the design stuff sounded great. I think there's a difference in an argument that can be made for ambient music, which is in the background, versus event music, which is in the foreground and tends to be much more local and gather people to it. I think you'd really be missing something important if you didn't have some sort of ambient background holiday music that was traditional, whether it was Danish or not. And my only other comment is I learned for the first time this evening that the soldiers in Nutcracker are German. I think of them as European and very traditional. And I'd bet that the Nutcracker is performed in Denmark just as readily as it is in Germany or France or anywhere else. Thank you.
Okay. Any more public comment on this item? If you would like to speak online, please raise your hand. I don't see any more speakers. So if you would like to make any last comments, or we can go to the next
Anybody have
item.
any comments?
I have a comment. Yes, I think if you do the dinner, and maybe I should recuse myself on this comment, but I think if you're going to have the dinner and you're going to have wine, you have numerous tasting rooms that are in Solvang, and to exclude any of those from that dinner, to me, would be sad. I think they should be included, and however if we move forward with that, if we place wines at each table for people to choose, would be my comment. Thank you.
I love everything. I think it's good. I think it's really festive, and I agree wholeheartedly on the ambient music comment. So thanks. I guess the only thing I would say about the dinner too is that uh, assuming that, you know, it drives demand, right? So you want it to be a success. So I guess, you know, how are you going to, Scott, like define success? And did you, you know, have a full house, like you sold every ticket last year? And so predicted, you know, predictive analytics would say that you're going to, you know, have a percentage of that this year, or, you know, how are you going to determine that it will be like a sold out event? And I think it can be made safe. That's clear, the way we've all been dining out in certain places or wine tasting, but how do you predict that it will be a success, I guess?
Yeah, can I answer that question, Zena? I
Yes.
don't know how the rules are, sorry. So yeah, the answer to the question, you know, the direct answer to the question last year is we decided to do the dinner, I think 10 days before the dinner. We pulled the restaurants in 6 days before the dinner, and we managed to get a half dozen out of town people to come, and we didn't want them to feel alone kind of sitting there in the park. So we added my own personal friends and family to it. I ended up underwriting the whole thing. We lost a fortune, and not a fortune, but we lost a significant amount of money. And but everybody loved it, had a great time. And the 6 people who bought tickets have all, you know, invited friends, family, and, you know, everybody else to come and do it again this year. So I think that there's demand for it. It's something that, you know, Visit San Ynez Valley has done for a number of years. I know that's they've had a king's table sort of dinner, which is not something we can do anymore because of COVID. But I think that, you know, this type of thing is beneficial, and if nothing else, it pays for, you know, there's a significant amount of money in decor and ornaments that we're looking at buying, you know, and additional staff to decorate the tree, decorate the town, and do things like that. So, you know, at some point we can't do any of the traditional things we would do to try and raise revenue to pay for all of the decoration around town this year. So we need to do something. And I think the dinner is the safest way to do it. And, you know, again, I don't want to get political, but I probably will fall on the more cautious side than the least cautious side when it comes to what, you know, we can and can't do. And you know, I agree. And on the personal side, I completely agree and respect what Tracy just said about, you know, the supervisor bringing 400 people to the park. And you know, for us, while I personally agree with that, and I understand how they did it, you know, professionally, you know, it would be tough for us to try and do something directly against the guidelines, whether I personally agree with them or not.
Is it legal to do a kind of like a charity dinner fundraiser type of thing? Like have it partially, like it's a city event, but it's also like we pick the charity of our choice in.
No,
We can't do that?
no,
Okay. Just,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah.
And to be specific, the way that we're, you know, we can't even do this if we do the dinner. We can't do the dinner as an event. We're doing the dinner as a pop-up restaurant. So, you know, we have to get a health permit for a restaurant. You know, the kitchen, the commissary that'll be used from the restaurants that are interested will have to be inspected that day as a temporary restaurant with outdoor dining, not as an event. So the rules, you know, again, we're following the rules to the letter of the law, but it's not by any means the same as what we were able to do last year. And I will say, like, even the drones, you know, obviously I was a huge proponent of those last year. There's been many residents who have, and business owners who have asked, you know, not so much asked as said, that's coming back, right? And, you know, I'm disappointed to say that I don't think that it's feasible. I don't see any way that we can do it safely. And you know, if we did a drive-in, which is permissible with tons of regulation, then we need space. I think, that becomes problematic. And then you just look at the dollars and, I'm not in the business of wasting the clients or my money. And I think that we would lose money, quite frankly.
So you did say that 6 people bought tickets last year?
Yeah, we only had, I think we served, I would have to go back and look, but I think we'd served only 15 or 16 people. I don't remember how many. It was not very many.
A source of income to pay for this event, that's the idea?
Pardon?
That money is a source to pay for this event. And that's the only source to pay for this other than just funds from the city?
Sorry.
Let me take this off. So that money is the source of income to help pay for this event. And that's the only source of income, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the city pays us a percentage of collected TOT for our marketing efforts, which works out to about $25,000 a month. And this, like, paying for all of the ornaments and the decor and creating all of these other elements would be obviously cost significantly more than that monthly income that we make from the city, which is fine, because at the end of the day, we would get that back eventually by continuing to drive people to Solvang and continue to keep people top of mind in Solvang. But in the short term, it would be far better if we were able to pay for that with additional funds. Pay for all the decor and pay for music if we're allowed to do that eventually, and all the rest of this. It would certainly be better if we could sell tickets to something to pay for that.
It seems.
Maybe it's a timing, maybe it should be a lunch, not a dinner. Maybe it's a matter of time of day, since everything else is closed at night, that maybe it feels like you're out in the middle of nowhere in the dark,
Well, it just seems like if you're trying to help the city, maybe it should coincide with some sort of restaurant week or restaurant
Yeah.
night where all the restaurants in town give some sort of deal and it drives more business to them than, a restaurant in the street that doesn't seem to draw that many people. It just seems like it doesn't seem like that great a promotion to me. It's maybe assisting one chef or one restaurant, but if they were to coincide with something that drives business to everybody, to get
what we-
more people down there to experience Jewel Fest.
Yeah, and what we did last year, just so you know, is we did ask most of the restaurants, and 4 wished to participate, so 4 did. And then we actually had, like, the spice merchant, they wanted to participate and weren't really sure how, so we did like a little, Esther is going to kill me because I'm not even going to try. I would butcher the name of it, but there was this mulled wine spice that we created in these little tiny tins that everybody got on their plate when they sat down. And then we did buy the wine from a couple of different local businesses. So in the end, again, the goal was obviously larger than it was, but last year I think we supported 8 different businesses. I would have to go back and look for sure, but again, that was last year's plan. I love the idea of, a restaurant week type of promotion instead. And I'm happy, I think the dinner was the dinner is probably the least expensive and easiest to execute of everything that we're talking about right now. So I think for us, understanding what your requirements or what you'd be looking for on the decor side are probably the most important.
I have a comment. Why could you not sell tickets to a wine walk with a dinner that was inclusive?
The wine merchants were not interested in a wine walk this year. We asked.
I was.
The majority of the wine merchants were not interested in the wine walk this year. There were only 2 that were in favor.
So once again, we're kind of talking here about the field, the design, the brand of this event. All of this will eventually be communicated by IDK to the council, and they will be working on the final solution.
Yeah, I'm fine with the look. I think you did a good job, and I don't have any comments other than that.
Agreed.
No other comments on the decor.
I have a question. My question is about the trees. Love having all the colored trees around the little lit trees around town. How does that impact traffic flow with, what's the plan on the placement? I hope that's being considered with 100 trees in the area. That's my main concern. And as far as the events, I think that's kind of outside the purview of our committee, and good luck.
Yeah, so to answer your question about the trees, and Tracy's correct that we've been playing phone tag a bit the last couple of days. There is a group that calls themselves the Christmas Tree Committee that has been doing this for a number of years. And for us, all we wanted to do is provide the trees and make sure that we were getting back photos, and in exchange for the trees, we're getting back photos and content, usable content throughout the month of December that we can use to promote town. And within the actual logistics of distributing the trees, stands, lights, all of that is being dealt with by the Christmas Tree Committee, which I'm sure Tracy, because I think this is something that Chamber's been heavily involved with for a number of years. I'm sure Tracy could provide additional detail on the logistics of it. But for us, we're just providing the trees and asking for the photos back.
Thank you.
No problem. I hope that answered your question, Esther.
If there is no further comments, there is no action required on this. Okay. We can go to item number, what is now 2B, which is the design guidelines for Copenhagen Drive closure and businesses operating outdoors with an encroachment permit in the tourism-related commercial district. So the background on this, as you would recall, you had first looked at specific guidelines for the 2 blocks of closure for Copenhagen Drive. Those guidelines are fairly specific in what they call the businesses to adhere to, which includes the use of umbrellas, the use of strong recommendation of use of black tables, and recommendation or requirement to use those very consistent barriers. The next time you looked at the guidelines for the tourism-related area, and you made recommendations that would be the same setup for businesses that are not immediately adjacent to a road. It would be very similar to Copenhagen closure. And if a business was adjacent to a road, we would be using those K rails for safety aspect and make those all white. The council originally approved the recommendation for the Copenhagen street closure, but when the larger tourism-related TRC district recommendations were brought to them, they directed staff to go back and be in contact with businesses and have additional conversations with businesses, and to bring this item, making some noise from somebody, to bring it back to the Branding and Design Committee to see if there's any changes that you would like to see in terms of your recommendations to go back for final approval to the council. My plan is to have it, or actually it's already on the agenda for the upcoming Monday, November 9th. We are dealing with a fairly short implementation timeframe here because we really want to have all of this set up along with the Yule Fest set up before the holidays, so essentially before Thanksgiving. So I had a meeting with the businesses that are directly impacted by these guidelines, and Scott and Tracy from the chamber were there as well. And sort of the highlights of the questions or recommendations from the business community who are impacted is, first of all, not to require the consistent barriers. I think that was very high importance for them. They would like to instead, from what I heard, and there will be public comment here, to have to be allowed to create their own barriers, but maybe just create some guidelines in terms of what may not be allowed. So, we may not have orange plastic things used for the barriers. They also don't like the idea of being required to use umbrellas. There was a lot of logistics brought up stating that umbrellas are not safe in the wind conditions, and that with winter months coming up, they actually would rather keep the parklets. Everybody agreed that the tents should go, but maybe the parklets should be situated more to accommodate the businesses. And as part of keeping parklets, it would be more work. We could require the businesses to do it, but if you lower the length of the legs a little bit, they would be a little bit lower to the ground and provide a little bit better shade. But once again, timing and everything that we're dealing with. So that's why we're here today. And if you would like to ask any questions at this point, then we have a number of people here, I think, that would like to make public comment on this item, both online and in person, and then you can deliberate and make whatever comments you would like me to take to the council on Monday. So if you have any questions, or we can just go to public comment.
I think go to public comment.
Okay, so let's go to public comment. Do we have anybody here in person that would like to speak on this item? Please come up one by one.
Hello, I'm Jeff from the Solvang restaurant. And after going and reviewing the plan, I've changed everything. I bought all new tables, chairs, umbrellas. But the only problem I'm having is with the plastic hedge that looks like breakfast at Tiffany's. And I feel that we should be individual, and we're not going, or I'm not going to put anything out there that is cheap looking, because I take a lot of pride in my restaurant. And the parklets are perfect for the holidays, because I do my side of the street. I've taken it upon myself with Brigitte from the Iron Art to run snowflakes down the whole side of the street. And I think with the parklets, I can do the snowflakes all the way around. And if we know they're going to stay, we can decorate them as opposed to you taking them away, because it's rainy season, and we can put canvas on top for those that want to still sit outside. But I really would like to do a different barrier, because my cost just for the barriers will be over $3,000, and I've already spent $2,500 on tables, chairs, and umbrellas. So that's what I would like. And one more thing about Copenhagen that you can address are the soldier boxes that used to be telephone booths. They're in really bad shape on the inside. I don't know if that's who owns the building needs to do it, but we want things to look clean. Thank you.
Okay, next person, please.
Hello, Tracy Beard from the Solvang Chamber again. We do want to make sure that it does have a little bit of a Danish theme. We do want to make sure, as we talked on Monday, and only 4 stakeholders were there. There are 11 stakeholders that you are financially asking to make a decision on, from $3,000 to $10,000. So please remember that as you make decisions, you're spending someone else's money. And some of those stakeholders, I don't think we need to do a poll on it. And I'd like to ask that the trellises stay in place. We can use plastic around them. As Jeff said, we can use canvas over the top, plastic on the sides, clear to see through. There's a clear plastic. The weather's going to get bad here in about 3 weeks. And our restaurants are going to suffer as soon as it rains. And we had a rainy season last year into November and early December, if you do remember. So that is something that I ask that you look at. 7 of the trellises are not being used at this time, and we ask that you put them in front of the wineries. that have not been able to move those themselves. And they don't even know if they can move them because they're across at retail spaces. There's 3 on the, what we want to call the west side of town, and there's 3 on the east side of town on our retail spaces that aren't being used. So I ask that you do that. And because 2 of our people couldn't speak tonight because the change in on the agenda, so they did leave. So I do speak, I think about for half of the businesses that have not been able, the stakeholders that you're asking to spend money. And maybe you might want to consider tabling this for a few weeks and that, because as we do know, there is a new council coming in place. You might want to table this, and we might want to have the best Christmas we can have with Scott doing the most amazing job that he's done every year with Christmas. And he did a great job last year. So thank you.
Do we have any more public comment in person? Do we have anybody online that would like to speak? Raise your hand. I see iPhone. I think that's Lucas and Llewellyn. There you go. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Do you hear me, Xenia?
Yes.
Hi, it's Andrew Moore from Lucas and Llewellyn and Takata. Just to echo what Jeff and Tracy said, we would really like to keep the parklets, and I think it was Xenia said to maybe shorten them a little bit, maybe a foot or 18 inches lower to the ground to get more shade, and easily coverable for the rainy season. We're supposed to rain this weekend, and talking to my staff today about how we're going to deal with that. It's not going to be a lot, but it's just going to be wet. We are quite strongly opposed to the idea of umbrellas. We don't feel it's safe given the wind conditions. We're having glasses blown off the table in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So umbrellas are going to be taking off. I just don't think that's viable. As far as the barriers are concerned, I would echo what Jeff said. We think the wine barrels that we have and other wineries have are kind of business appropriate, and we can, dress that up with plants and what have you, and make it look better. But we would like to see, as Tracy said, some of those other parklets moved. We could use another 2. And Scott did mention at the meeting on whenever it was, Monday, that perhaps we could build a few more if necessary. So that's where we're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to make a public comment online? Please raise your hand. Let's see, Amanda, Philip. Anybody else would like to speak? Amanda, go ahead.
Hi, I'm also in favor of keeping the barrels and the parklets due to the weather. And I think that all of Scott's ideas look great, specifically with the over-the-top lighting, since the Cambria Christmas market isn't happening. I think that's very marketable with social media and stuff, which is very important.
Thank you. And Amanda, could you please state your full name and who you're representing?
Amanda Marsh, and I own Cali Love Wine on Copenhagen.
Thank you. Anybody else online would like to make a comment? Please raise your hand. Only Philip Grant. Doesn't look like anybody else is raising their hand. That concludes public comment.
So is anybody
Told
have
you
any
so.
comments?
No. No, I recall that I said last time that we should consider keeping the parklet. Because I think they're practical, right? And we said they don't look Danish, but if the businesses see value in them, and again, it's temporary. I've been thinking a lot about this because it's temporary. And I think Tracy made a really good point that the new council is going to have potentially a completely different view of the world. So why should we tell the current businesses to change anything right now in the middle of a changeover? So I am fully supportive of not making any decisions because I just don't think it's fair, frankly. And while I respect the goal, it just feels like it's not fair to the businesses to sort of make statements that then could be retracted in a matter of time.
I'd like to chime in on that too, if I could. I echo what you say as far as our roles and responsibilities and really kind of a lack of clarity about what those actually are. There's also issues with, establishing compliance and maintenance of all these areas. And those are things that are outside of our, kind of purview. And with all the changes that are certain to come and the changes in leadership being the key here, I think that mandating new guidelines of a big degree of expense or even a small degree are inappropriate at this time. I would, however, like to encourage the council and maybe this committee to advocate for the expedited removal of the pop-ups that really are such a visual blockade for the businesses on the other side of them and really do detract from the look of town. And also a consideration of, as we spoke of, about the sign ordinance and kind of sticking with the not utilizing an emergency ordinance to allow signs everywhere.
I feel for all the businesses and the money being spent. They're already losing money as it is, so I get that. And but I think if we could come up with something that's consistent for maybe wine businesses and restaurants or something so that it's not so helter-skelter out there. I've seen a lot of cities and what they've done, and a lot of them haven't done a good job. I mean, Santa Barbara, they're talking about what a great job they've done down there, and it looks terrible to me. I mean, there's no cohesiveness, but maybe we should slow down on this a little bit. The parklets have bugged me from day one. I mean, as an architect, I look at those things, and if you cover them up and you put a lid on them and you start putting sides on them, they become a structure that the wind will move. And so they have to be anchored to the ground, and somebody has to really look at it. And I'm amazed they provide any kind of shelter as they are now. There's just a tarp that sags on top of a 4x4 structure. But anyway, if they're going to utilize those, maybe they're consistent. Whatever is done to them, it's not one shop doing one thing and another shop doing another thing. But if they are going to be enclosed partially, they will be impacted by the wind like an umbrella. And if one of those goes over, it's going to be a big deal. So, but yeah, maybe we should slow down. A lot of change is coming, and but I think as a committee here, our goal is to try and get some consistency along Copenhagen, and to have each business doing their own thing doesn't bode well for the backdrop, which is the cool buildings and all the things going on there. It becomes a distraction to the beauty of that street. And so I think visually something needs to be consistent. Maybe we need to loosen it up a little bit more and give a little flexibility, but that's pretty much what I've got. Can we entertain another from the public here?
We got two more. We got
Yes.
Zoom and one online.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I suggest that you have a liaison between you and us that will come out and see our ideas, and then you bring it back and you say yay or nay, as opposed to all on paper for everybody.
Yeah.
Do we have another public comment, please?
Yeah, I like the idea, Eric Hutchins. I like the idea of having some boundaries on the responsibilities for this group, but something doesn't feel right for me to promote the notion of slowing down. I think you're an advisory committee, that you're in touch with the street, and no matter who stands above you as elected officials, you need to move fast and sure-footed. So I would just encourage you to stay the course and to try to discern where you can do the most good, the quickest for the least expense for the business community, and where you can't. For example, the parquettes, I agree that they're not perfect. I also remember back when one of the umbrellas fell over out in the Central Valley, when the whole countryside was covered with umbrellas out there and killed some lady. So liability isn't trivial. And as the architect said, I think doing anything further to those needs to be looked at very carefully. That said, they are the best we have. They're money spent. And I think that at best they're spring, summer, fall kinds of things. But they offer about all you have right now on the street that is consistent with any standard. And so, for example, if I have parquettes in one hand and pop-up tents in the other, there's no contest. I do away with the pop-up tents, and I try to make do with the parquettes with some little modification without overdoing it and making them a hazard. One final comment on what was said before. I think something along the lines where you had a contest, like a wine walk kind of thing, people buy tickets at one place and they go from winery to restaurant to business, and everybody offers them their holiday drink outside or something, or some holiday drink and little food thing could actually raise a great deal of money and encourage people, at least get people familiar with where to go for wine, where to go for meals and that sort of thing. So I'd like to see you take another look at that at the appropriate time for fundraising for the Christmas event. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more speaker, or two more speakers. Tracy.
We ask that you have the standards that you sent out, that people do the encroachment. We do agree with that very much so. And we do have a few people that have not done the encroachment yet. So we do ask that we look at that. We also have some businesses, and one is a bookstore that is already, there's no retail outside. And I don't know how retailers can be outside in a white tent. And that is inappropriate to even the county guidelines at best. So that is nowhere in the red tier or any tier that we have for retail to be outside. I just got an email from one of the people that are on, they'd like to see a sunset at 4:45 for dinner with that. And I think that would be good. And I also think you could do a progressive one with the restaurants also, so I do think there's some opportunity for the restaurants still. But please remember, January 5th, we will not have tourism. We live on the month of December and late November. These businesses do. January, they have no income. Some of them have $25 to $100 a day. So please remember that. And we live on that as a business community. And we bank for the month of December for a slow January every year. And that's year after year. And you can talk to your business owners on that.
Okay, we have one more comment on the iPhone. Andrew, please go ahead.
Lucas and Llewellyn. And just so you appreciate, and I'm sure you do, the pop-ups were out of necessity and panic, not to put too fine a point on it. What are we going to do to be outside? So that's why those materialized all over the place. And we appreciate that they have to go. I think we can do some suitable modifications to the parklets that would be safe. They're pretty heavy. They're not going anywhere. And that would be my only comment.
Okay.
Well, I will say that I liked Esther's, the way Esther gets to it, that she recommended that we, absolutely say that there's no pop-ups and we live with the condition that we have now. And if you haven't bought your barriers or your, then we don't force the issue for right now. Because I mean, I don't know. I just have a sensitivity to that. I do agree that we need to move ahead, but I think for me, the question is, does the new council say, let's expedite the final closure, the permanent closure? Do they move to that? And if they do, then we're kind of waste. I don't want you to waste money if they change the direction to something more permanent. Because as we talked about earlier on, if it was a permanent closure, we might think about it completely differently. So I just don't want to, I don't know, that's my concern.
What is the timeline for enforcement? I mean, I assume there's some sort of enforcement that you got to do this now, or, you know, when this is decided. So the businesses on Copenhagen have to get barriers, get tables, get umbrellas. I mean, how does that work?
Well, right now, it's where we are is that council has requested me to come here, get any additional feedback for businesses and from you. And then the item is going to go back to council on November 9th, depending on what they say. Then it falls into the enforcement category.
So once they vote on it, then it goes to you, and then you
I
correct
work
the
with the businesses on implementation. So it will be multiple staff, you know, some of our public works maintenance staff will be coordinating
Jeff's
certain
ahead.
items.
He's ahead of the schedule, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we've communicated originally when the council first approved the Copenhagen closure to all the businesses that these are the guidelines. But then since then, the current council has reversed direction, which is why we are here today. And yes, there will be a new council on December 14th.
Yeah, well, I'm torn here. I mean, we're living in the time we're living in now, and we're mandated to do something now. And we're not assuming, you know, we're making an assumption that the new council may change everything, but so then they change everything. I mean, that's what happens. But I think the guidelines that we've put forth, if you want to leave the parklets, I think, you know, fine. If they serve a function, they're fine. But I think, I thought that the whole point of this was to try and get some consistency along Copenhagen so that it was appealing to tourists.
Right.
And when I've gone to these various cities and I've seen the response to COVID, it's not great. And you walk down the street and it just looks like a bunch of hobbled together things, and it doesn't bode well for the city. So I understand what the council's trying to do, and I understand, being self-employed myself, how difficult it is. It's hard. But you just can't have everybody doing their own thing out there. It doesn't come together as a city. So maybe we discuss some options for wineries. But not every business, I don't think every business should have their own thing going on.
But I completely agree with that. And philosophically, that's the same thing that we've all been saying, was that if you really care about the Danish brand, then it should be Danish. And that's the reason why we put some of those guidelines together, was that it was more of a modern take on, you know, Danish culture. So if you go to wine barrels, for instance, wine barrels are, yes, they are good for wine tasting, but they're not Danish.
Well, they're
So
an easy barricade for a winery.
They are.
They have all
That's
kinds of barrels. but
That's right.
I
So
don't-
that's why I'm saying it's for us right now in the middle of this transition to force the issue when the businesses have come back and said, we have concerns with this. To me, if you care about what the businesses are saying, for right now, we just hold. We say absolutely no pop-ups because we all agree that they don't look great. And everything else, it's not terrifying what's being done out there. It's not. I mean, I get what you're saying and I completely understand it and empathize with it, but it's not like the fluorescent orange fencing, right? That's not happening. So I think my view is we need to just be sort of middle of the road
We
And
have to come
then,
up with guidelines, so. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what the whole point of
so
the
what
board
would,
is. so
what would
guideline-
you, what
Well,
would you say?
we have to, whether it's these planters and we expand it a little bit, maybe there's a more economical version of potted plants that are all the same pot. I don't know, but something lesser. And, but we have to decide. I mean, we have to not pretend, we have to assume that this is going to be a permanent thing. And if the council decides to change it down the road, they do. Shame on them, but that's just what we're.
But I am against total unification, like everything,
That's not what I'm saying. I'm
No, I
saying
know.
give flexibility.
Yeah,
But we
exactly.
need to
Can we
expand
come
it.
up with some guide, like, okay, if the wineries want to use the barrels, why not let them? That could be the option for some. Then we have wineries with barrels, but also with something else. Like, let's give them some options. Maybe not the hay with bells, like that.
No hay bales, right?
Yeah.
You're saying no hay bales.
No.
But the wine barrel thing to me is kind of a, I'm looking for a better word than cop out. I mean, wineries are flush with wine barrels and it's an easy fix, to just go out there and stack them up and there's your barricade. And where the wineries are when you walk down the street. It's not a mystery. I mean, they're easy to see. So it's not like you need that to advertise them. And it's so different than everything else that we're trying to propose along Copenhagen. They just don't fit. I mean, if a restaurant wants to come in with a smaller pot and space them out and they look similar to these planters that we came up with, then there's an option. It's an easier thing. You can stretch them out. It doesn't cost as much. And there's no reason a winery can't do the same thing. I don't think they need the barrel to advertise their business. I mean, it just seems like it's almost like a billboard that, oh, here's a winery, there's some barrels. And they don't fit with anything else that we're trying to do. And we're trying to,
We're trying to elevate.
Well,
the
the stuff that
experience,
goes along the colonnade or whatever you want to call it should be more subtle and let the buildings bring the Danish out. And that's what I thought we were trying to do, was something muted and less in your face. And when you start randomizing all these things, it really messes it up. So, maybe we can add some things that are less expensive, that this restaurant doesn't have to put out 3,000 for barricades. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, what happened to if you're opposed to the barrels, initially there were the parquettes with picket fence. And you have the picket fence that's
I
been.
think it looks terrible.
Well, you have the picket fence at the Copenhagen house. Is that Danish?
Well, that's not part of this. That's not approved in this new.
No, but
guidelines.
I'm saying if we're making other decisions on, you want to do away with the barrels and you've had the umbrellas, to me, I don't see that the planters with the plastic it really is indicative of Copenhagen.
Well, barrels aren't either, but
No.
it's just what I'm talking about is what we're trying. I think conceptually what we are trying to do here, what's happened out there now obscures the Danishness of Copenhagen. It blocks the view. So what we were trying to do is do something that was uniform and subtle to bring that back. And low scale. And so that's where we were coming from. You weren't in on those meetings, so you
Right.
kind of missed that, but that was the intent.
I understand, but when you have businesses you have a small petition of a planter that's nearly $400 and tables and 4 chairs for a limited space that are non-functional, you're asking people on businesses to come up with $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 when their businesses, just as Tracy was mentioning, in January may have $25 to $100 a day. and they're still having rents of $4,000 a month.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it makes me wonder, should we, again, maybe the best of both worlds is to can we eliminate the barriers?
No,
On
because
Copenhagen, we cannot?
businesses that serve alcohol will
Oh,
have
they
to
have to have some
a-
barrier.
yes.
Okay, that's
They
right.
have to be solid.
So and they have to be solid. So they
Right.
can't be a simple chain system either.
It can be a little chain, actually. Yeah, it just has to be, there shouldn't be a way to walk in and walk out other than at the designated entry.
So I think we need to go back and we need to individually think about it and we need to come back then with something. Aren't we meeting again next week?
I don't know. Are we?
On November
12th?
12th.
Yeah.
Go
Go ahead, Esther. What are you going to say?
Well, okay, so, it seems as though if anything is going to be achieved in time for the holiday season, it basically has to kind of come from us today to go to the city council meeting on Monday. Am I understanding that right, Zena?
Yes, I think time-wise, that is as realistic as we can be in order to actually implement something. And I would say that my recommendation in how we think about this whole setup right now is may also want to just focus a little bit more on, the very important months of December that we need to get through with this particular direction, and things may change thereafter.
So with that in mind, where we're just kind of focusing on taking us through the holiday season, I absolutely agree with Brett that and all of the committee's earlier decisions to bring down the level and keep the focus on the buildings. However, it's clear that that's not something that's being embraced by the business community that's most impacted. So with that said, and trying to actually accomplish something tonight that might be able to be implemented in time, as much as I'm not a fan of, I guess we call them the parklets, the little structures that were built, I would propose that we allow the continued use of those parklets with the barriers created by planters that fit within our previous design guidelines. Still advocating for the black furniture. No, it doesn't have to be a 4-top table with regular seating chairs, that just whatever furniture you have, if it could be black furniture to have a unity to it, that the parklets be allowed to have a cover of some variety. I don't know about the lowering them because I don't know how tall they are and what the guidelines are. Having a really tall family and you don't want to have people walking in and hitting their heads on the edges. So I can't speak to that, but a cover for the top that could be canvas with some kind of practical function. Wrapping them in plastic, I'm not an advocate of. Yeah, it's going to rain and I don't have an answer other than let's go for the orange tier to allow more seating inside. I wish there was time to take up Eric's suggestion. I think he had great suggestions in that there are best practices and guidelines needed. We put that together, but it seems as though that's not being, it's not practical for the community as we did it. And then going back to also incorporating in that the businesses outside of the Copenhagen closure utilize those consistent white barriers, because I don't believe that that was decided on or voted in by the city council, so that we can have that consistency, not just on Copenhagen, but on the other in the other areas as well. And to Jennifer's suggestion, I think, or whoever it was, that the existing little parklets be moved where they're most needed. They don't have to sit in front of a retail space, since they're not going to ever have anything out there. And there can still be a chair and table that the city provides out there, but doesn't have to have that cover. So that's my proposal to move things forward and expedite this to the council.
So is it a crazy idea to suggest, since it's the holidays, to do something like a stanchion?
A stanchion where?
Like, so I'm just, again, trying to keep it real simple and make it be movable and usable and easy. And, it came to mind, theaters, velvet ropes, right? So something really simple that's not that expensive, that's movable, I'm just trying to be creative here, but that has less visual impact. It does meet the requirement. It isn't that expensive.
Did you present that to us in,
A stanchion?
was there some stanchion chain thing, or I guess it's existing out there and we were saying how we didn't want that?
No, but actually, originally when the businesses expanded, for example, Red Viking had just a rope that was a fairly nice rope with those black planters that
Yeah.
were in between that almost looked like
Like
that
that.
stanchion, but it was actually even probably cheaper or more practical to just have those flower pots, just like the Danish mill bakery now has, and then have a rope around them.
But see, that could be an option. So if
yeah.
you're not going to do, if you can't do flower pots, right? Because we said we wanted more flowers, more greenery. Then instead, again, I think this is less obtrusive and it meets the requirement than trying to go down the road of, like we were saying, like, yes, wine barrels are easy for wineries and they're an obvious mark, but they don't speak to the Danish thing that we're trying to do. They do not. Neither do the parklets, which originally is why we, said they probably shouldn't stay long term. But that's,
Yeah, if you
Well, and at this point, for me, of course, I'm always advocating for it to be, fitting with the Danish culture of town, but I don't think there's time or money to make that happen.
yeah.
So let's make the Danish be the architecture and make make it the most cohesive that we can, and help the merchants and the business owners make it a cohesive, welcoming look. And I think that that's the best we can do with the time and the budgets.
Yeah, I think if we, there's no, I don't think there's anything in existence called a Danish planter. So we were just trying to make it low key, but if we could get just a black stanchion, and whether it's rope or whatever, they could wrap their foil around it or lights or whatever. Yeah. And that would, and maybe that, it's not up to me to say, but maybe the city pays for that. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
and
they're
just
movable
makes it
and
a straight
usable.
line across in front of the businesses and just get rid of all this random stuff out there.
Why? Okay, as a customer, I don't like sitting on the road, basically. Okay, I know there is no cars, there is no traffic, but people are walking, and I like that barrier.
Mhm.
So if we now tell no barriers, just the ropes,
Well, maybe we put a limited amount of barriers, but I don't know. It's hard to sit here and mandate expenses to businesses that are already suffering. Just sit here and go, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
And everybody is suffering along that street in this whole town. So
Maybe
something subtle.
if you did the guideline and you bought the barriers, like we know Renee did, right? So he has them up, then he gets to leave them because they met that guideline,
Right.
right? And then if you can't and you don't, but at least this is a simple solution that is pretty cost effective, and it's not going to completely destroy, again, this is not going to destroy the
Right.
neighborhood.
Well, I think from what I've heard, just in thinking about the council night on Monday, what I heard from businesses was the desire to be able to develop their own barriers that are maybe, different planters or.
That is going to be a hodgepodge.
I would
There-
never
that cannot
go for
happen.
that. Yeah,
There,
that would.
you cannot design and make things look cohesive by a random set of whatever they want to do based on whatever is going on in their world.
Okay.
It just doesn't work that way.
So then let's work through, is the majority of you now saying no to barrels?
Well, yeah, and maybe the biggest thing here is whether this is a permanent closure or this is a
Right.
temporary closure. So
I think at this
temporary-
point where we are, we're really kind of looking at getting through December.
Right, so
until
it's
we
a
have-
temporary closure.
It's definitely a temporary closure.
So something like
December the next
stanchions
year or
and
this year?
Well, this year at this point.
Oh.
I mean, if in the months of January, there was a desire to come back to this and remove parklets, that is still removable. Those
Right.
changes can happen. We are getting very close to Thanksgiving. That's the beginning of Yule Fest. We have to make something work for the month of December.
Why don't you keep the parklets? You're decorating, you have all the Christmas trees and the lighting where I've noticed on some of the areas, lighting could be hazardous, but if we unify all the lighting on the parklets where it's by code, as well as brought the Christmas trees with the decorations, that we kept it all cohesive, wouldn't that give us a look that's unified instead of hodgepodge?
well, we got to create barriers though.
Yes, but even if you do what you're saying and you have the Christmas trees even on the outside that's anchored to the parkettes. I've had Christmas trees and I've seen on Copenhagen, they just fall without any anchoring. They could be anchored and decorated as going down Copenhagen.
Oh, God, we're going way far afield here.
I need to say something. You guys need to remember the ABC guidelines first and foremost, please. This does not meet ABC guidelines. It has to be totally enclosed, and Jennifer can tell you that. ABC must have a fence or something around it that those wine glasses and those wine, bottles can't walk out. They have to be actually gone around. So please remember that. I think this is wonderful. It's the cost, but the ABC, you got to talk about that as you're talking. That's why the wineries are set up that way, okay?
Well,
So can I make a comment about the ABC? I had spoken with our representative from the ABC who licenses and inspects everybody for Solvang, and he did specifically say that a consistent rope would be sufficient for the compliance with ABC.
Because of COVID, right?
no,
Yeah.
well, you have to be able to close off the area where alcohol is served outside. And it's done with stanchions and ropes all the time.
Right.
So that's legal. You don't have to have a solid barrier or anything like that, but I just think we need to simplify this, especially because of time
Yes.
and the expense. And I think that the city should just put up a simple stanchion and rope. And if somebody wants to invest in some of these planter barricades, put them in there, but nothing else. It just makes it chaotic and it just doesn't look right. So
What if you go back and rent fencing just till December?
then what do you do after that? I mean, this isn't just we're trying to solve the problem going forward. So it's more.
I understand, but I thought part of the comment was that this could be just through December.
Well, we don't know that, but I think our focus right now needs to be through December. So to me, when we think about parklets, yes, is there, a different use for them during the Yule Fest and all of the decorating? And maybe that changes down the line, but it's already there, so we don't have to install anything. We can always remove down the line. The fences were actually costing IDK and then the city some $7,000, I forget, a month, which was fairly expensive for leasing those. So I would not recommend going back to that. So if we can't just do the barriers and the, the ropes.
Well, why don't we why don't we say that we'll keep the parklets and,
And move them where they're.
yeah,
most
move them
used.
wherever they're appropriate. And if they are covered or partially enclosed, that it be the same for all. It's not really up to us to say they get anchored. That's up to the building department to deal with, but, and then that we come up with a simple stanchion and rope. And if somebody wants to go along and put the barricades, the planter barricades up, they're welcome to do that within that, what we've set up. And God, I was going to say something else and I forgot. We're kind of bouncing all over the place here. The umbrellas. Is it an absolute necessity if somebody doesn't want to put umbrellas at their tables? They don't need to, right?
No.
I mean, so,
No, they don't have.
and there's ways to anchor umbrellas. So I understand the wind blows them, but if they don't want to put an umbrella up, they don't have to. And if these parklets are going to become partial enclosures, then fine. But simplify it so that, and the other part of it is that the businesses should not be allowed to do their own thing. They've got to coordinate, so it looks the same around town. That's right.
Brett, I think that I wanted to just be clear. So, because I've kind of lost track, are we saying no parklets? Like that's what we're calling the little structures? Are we saying yes to the shade structures?
Yes,
I
to the
think-
parklets, because it seems as though the businesses have a productive use for them.
Right.
I concur, and I liked Jennifer's suggestion about having a consistency so that if they're decorating them, let's have everybody have little white lights that are the Danish white lights on them. And, that will give it a consistency. Utilizing, I still advocate for the black planters and or Christmas trees as the barriers and anchors in the spaces as needed. And restaurants don't have to have the same, enclosures. And I guess if that, if they can't use those options or need more than a rope, but I would kind of dissuade the use of that kind of rope barrier because that looks so temporary and reachable to me. It seems like it's more private. So, it seems as though that would be something that the merchants and business owners can live with and work with, and we could advocate for tonight. Again, do you need best practices and guidelines? But could we just maybe take maybe I could make a motion so we could, go from there. So my motion would be that we utilize the existing parklets. We stick to the design guidelines given previously regarding planters as barriers and add into that Christmas trees as barriers. Add that Christmas lights be the Danish white lights, and that the areas outside of the Copenhagen closure adopt the white light decorations and the white barricades, and throw in one more thing, and that is to remove the existing pop-ups in the area. That's my very long motion.
Can I ask one, when you say Christmas trees as barriers, let's say you have a 30, 40-foot frontage on Copenhagen and you put a Christmas tree there. Are you saying putting numerous Christmas trees or I don't understand the Christmas tree thing as a barrier.
Oh, well, Scott from IDK is providing those 100 little live trees. So they're planters, and I don't know the size of them, but I'm assuming that they can't be that big. So making that as one of your planters instead of a flower pot, it's a Christmas tree pot.
So we're saying we're allowing them to put them on the border, the perimeter of their property somewhere? I don't know. I just to confuse the Christmas trees with the barrier, just It's a,
And that, hey, take the Christmas tree out of there if you want. So, I mean, that was just kind of a starting point with my motion, because it seemed as though we needed to come up with a cohesive plan.
yeah, I'm fine with everything else. I just think the trees should be wherever they're gonna be, but not,
Can I just clarify something too? Majority of our restaurants do actually require having a barrier because they serve alcohol, so they also have ABC permits. So if you use Christmas trees, you could put a rope between them, but you would still be needing to do
You
that.
still require the stanchion. You do. You can't attach the rope to the trees.
it,
I mean, it'll look bad.
it's just, I think if you, the Christmas tree is one thing completely separate and we're looking
Sure.
long-term. So if we do, I agree with everything you said, Esther. It's just the tree confuses me and I think they're gonna be in other places. And if they want to put them out front, you know, maybe that's fine, but to tie it into the barrier just seems a little odd.
Eric would
Take-
like to add something. He's trying to.
Just
No, I'm
quickly,
saying I'm absolutely fine with removing that. So if we remove that from the motion, then I
Okay.
amend it to remove that.
Esther, for my clarification, does your motion allow for the stanchions and the ropes?
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe we can just add that you don't have to have an umbrella at your table.
Yeah, it's not required.
Well, especially if you're using the little parklet things, then that's kind of a moot point, I think.
Yeah. Well, does somebody want to second that?
Well,
No,
Eric
there is,
Well, do we-
Eric would like to add.
Are we still
something.
open to the public?
You
for
can
comment?
you can allow that as the chair.
Go ahead. Please speak your mind.
just very quickly, and in the interest of getting closure, it seems you're headed in the direction of closure, so we don't want to sidetrack that. You have two cases out there on the street. You have people who are using parquettes and people who are not, okay? Parquette legs are essentially stanchions for ropes or lights strung between them, okay? So it's conceivable that we could get rid of the barrels if that's what you want, and essentially use the legs of the parquettes for those people using parquettes as anchor points for a nice strung rope with lights on it even. And for the people who don't want to use parquettes, you could give them the alternative of stanchions with rope between them that also could support strings of lights. And I think that would go a long way to creating a visual similarity up and down your street. That's my suggestion.
Okay, yeah, and I think that can be coordinated. So does somebody want to make a second on that motion that Esther made?
I'll second it.
Okay. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Esther? No. Thank
Aye.
you. Everybody 5-0. We have some direction. I will take this to council on Monday and we'll go from there. We'll see what they say.
I would like to add something. During the last meeting, we were talking about signage. And one of the propositions were to put the signs were at the corners, pointing to some businesses. I want to go farther. And I was thinking about map of the like all the businesses in yes, map of the village. So I was in Salt Lake City last year, and they had a like downtown map, and it was very useful. Yes, because I'm losing. I am easily distracted. I mean, lost in the town. So there was few. Can you put that slide, Zinja?
Can you show my screen? I'm not sure if this is the one.
No, yeah, but okay. This is one of the ideas, like to have map and then all the businesses in downtown. If we can go to the next. Can we go from the beginning? Like, yeah, so I, when I was looking for a map of Solvang, I found there is something already existing for hotels, I guess.
We actually, and I don't recall exactly what the maps look like, but there's been maps that the chamber used to create in the Solvang Chamber of Commerce. So those exist.
Can we go to the first?
And so just to be careful here, this item is not on the agenda, so
Oh.
we cannot have
Oh, okay.
deliberation about
No.
it.
Okay,
But you can, as part of your committee member comments on the number 4, just throw some of these ideas out there,
That's
but
fine.
we won't be able to discuss it. But I can go to the beginning that you want to show. Is it this?
yeah, so that was from Salt Lake City and that looked, to me, it was very useful. And I was thinking it will be good if we could strategically put 3 of those structures in the downtown. And
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any additional comments from just you as a committee member?
No?
Okay,
No.
okay.
I have a question, Zena.
Mhm.
I believe it is next week that the lights, the overhead lights are being installed. Am I correct in understanding that?
We have the lights for the top of the Copenhagen flying from China. We are hoping they will arrive next week or the week after, and it will take about a week for staff to install them.
So basically, they're going to be kind of the launch of Yule Fest is going to be the installation of the lights and getting those up.
Exactly, yes.
Well, I mean, if they're going to be delayed, that's, kind of is a good way of kicking it off. No further comments from me tonight.
Thank you.
Is there gonna be some, the Brown Act training, or did you had any conversation about that?
I have the documents.
Oh, okay, all right. Because honestly, we gotta all be really careful with self-promotion, and there's a few instances here where wine's brought up, and I think you
Right.
need to really check yourself on some of that stuff.
Well, as you would recall, we had this conversation with Renee's
Yeah.
involvement, and so those guidelines were presented to you at that time by
I got
city
it.
attorney. So
Just-
it's similar, very, very much the same situation here.
Yeah, so, all right.
Okay, and adjourned.
Adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.